So this is how to derive the quadratic formula. How to derive the quadratic formula. Okay, so guys, I apologize about being late with this. Okay. I had been telling my kids for so long that I was going to do this video, and I finally mustered up the courage and the focus to do so. So, what we're going to do today for a period of time is we're going to convert the quadratic equation in standard form, ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. We're going to convert this to the quadratic formula. Okay, the quadratic formula, which is x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. Okay, so I guess what I can do to further explain this is maybe write it down. Quadratic formula. Okay, formula. Okay, and this right here is the standard form of a quadratic equation. Okay. All right. Now, a couple of things about quadratics you need to understand is a quadratic is a nonlinear function or nonlinear figure rather. It's a nonlinear figure with one turning point. And what makes a quadratic is this 2 right here. Okay, so anytime you have that 2 that's squared, you have a quadratic. All right, so my biggest task today in a short period of time is I'm going to convert this function here to this function right here. Okay, now with the quadratic formula, it's very simple. And when I mean simple, if you can't factor a quadratic, you can always use the quadratic formula. The quadratic formula will give you all solutions, roots, and values of x when it comes to quadratics. So the quadratic formula is your quote unquote cheat code. All right. So let's convert the quadratic equation in standard form to the quadratic formula. Here we go. So I'm going to start off by writing the quadratic equation in standard form. Ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. Again, that's ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. All right. Now, there are a couple of ways that you can start. The first thing you need to understand about algebra 2, and geometry is that whatever you do on one side, you have to do on the other side. Okay. Now, that should be a cardinal rule in all mathematics. Whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other side, right? And and the reason why I say that is because we're bringing about a balance, okay? Which means the left side equals the right-hand side, right? So understandably here, whatever we find out here on this left-hand side is going to equal 0 on the right-hand side, okay? So in order to begin the steps of finding the quadratic formula from the quadratic equation in standard form is first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to divide everything on the left hand side by a, that coefficient right here, and then divide a on the right hand side as well. Okay, so I'm going to divide this term, and 0 by a. Okay, I'm going to divide it all by a. Okay, so when I do that, I'll have x squared, right, plus b over a x, right, plus c over a equals 0. Okay? Then I want to subtract this constant term. Whatever it is, I want to subtract this constant term, and I'll explain to you in a second why I want to do that. So I want to subtract c over a on both sides, minus c over a. Okay? I have x squared plus b over a x now equals negative c over a. Okay, that's now this is where I am now. Okay, now on a separate sheet of paper, this is what I want to show you. Okay, because mathematics is very simple, but it can be very complicated at times. All right, so on a separate sheet of paper, I'm going to complete the square of the left hand side. I'm going to complete the square. Okay, now I'll talk about completing the square on another video, but for right now, just follow what I'm saying. In order to complete the square, you have to take the b term. That is the term in front of the x. So I have the x squared term, the x term, and the constant. All right. So I have to take half of the b term. So the b term equals b over a. I'm going to take half of that. I'm going to take half of it. So I'm going to divide b over a by 2. So b over a divided by 2. Okay. In order to get rid of this denominator here, I've got to multiply by the reciprocal of 2, which is 1 over 2. So I'm going to multiply by the reciprocal of 2 in the denominator, right? And I'm going to multiply by the reciprocal of 2 in the numerator. In the denominator, the number at the bottom of the fraction, they cancel. So now I have b over 2a. Okay? Okay, so I have b over 2a, right? I have b over 2a, and I'm going to take that new b term and I'm going to square it. I'm completing the square. So I'm going to take this new b term and I'm going to square it, right? So whatever I do to the left-hand side, I do to the right-hand side. So I'm going to square this right here, right? I'm going to square it. So b over 2a, the quantity of that squared, okay? Now I'm going to write that over here. So I'm going to have x squared plus b over a x plus b squared over, what is that? 4a squared equals, okay, equals, okay, equals negative c over a plus b squared over 4ac. 4a squared rather, sorry, 4a squared, excuse me, okay? Now, what I'm forgetting here is this b term. So now this is what I need to do, guys. When I write this as a square here, the new b term would be plus b over 2a, and this will be x, right? So when I square this, let me just prove that to you here using the box method. Using the box method, I have x plus b over 2a times x plus b over 2a, right? I have x squared, okay? Then I have b over 2ax, b over 2ax, and then I have b squared over 4a squared, right? Okay? Now, what am I doing here? What am I doing here? When I bring it out here, I have x squared, right, plus 2b over 2ax, right? Because this is 1b and 1b, and when the denominators are the same, all you do is add the numerators, right? Okay, plus b squared over 4a squared, right? So guess what? Because the greatest common factor between the numerator and the denominator is 2, they cancel. That's why I have this b over a right there, okay? So all I'm doing now is I am condensing, right, this perfect trinomial right here to this. Now, on the right-hand side, I have negative c over a, right, plus b squared over 4a squared, okay? Now, I've got to find the greatest common denominator between these two right here, which is 4a squared. So on the right-hand side, rather, I'm going to put everything under 4a squared here, right? And I'm going to multiply the c term times 4a, right? So I've got negative c times 4a, right, plus b squared, okay? And on the left-hand side, I have the quantity of x plus b over 2a, that quantity squared, okay? So let me do a little simplifying to clean things up. I have the quantity of x plus b over 2a squared equals b squared minus 4ac over 4a squared. Okay? Now what do I do here? Let me get another sheet of paper. What do I do here now? Okay? I've got a squared, and what I want to do in the end is I want the what I want to do on the end here is I want to simplify everything so I get x equal to something, right? So moving over here, okay, what I need to do here is this. I need to take the square of both sides, okay, the square of both sides. I have the quantity of x plus b over 2a squared equals b squared minus 4ac over 4a squared, right? The opposite of the squared value or something squared is the square root. So this comes out to be x plus b over 2a equals, right, the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. Why? Because the square root, excuse me, the square root of 4a squared is 2a. Okay, so that simplifies, right? And we'll explain radical simplification in another video, right? So now what I can do now is understand this. When I take the square root of a value, I get a plus and a minus option. I get a plus and a minus value, right? So this is going to be plus or minus, okay? So now let me get the x by itself, and I'm going to subtract b over 2a on both sides. So minus b over 2a on the left-hand side and minus b over 2a on the right-hand side, plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. Okay. Now, on the left-hand side, I have x equals, right? And then on the right-hand side, now I have negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac divided by what? 2a, because they have common denominators. I only need to write it one time. Here is my quadratic formula. Okay? So follow these steps here, and this is predominantly for my classes at my job. Follow these steps here. Write down these steps. Boom. Write down these steps. And there you have the quadratic formula. Again, thank you for watching the Simplified Steps playlist, and I'll be back with the next video entitled Inverses. All right? Peace and blessings.